Good
And
morning,
we're
good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Groovy Podcast. My name is Ken Kousen. I'm podcasting from Marlborough, Connecticut, and I am joined by...
and I'm Baruch Sadogursky, podcasting from Sunnyvale, California.
Yes, the irrepressible Baruch Sadogursky. So you've been all over the world recently, right? You've been everywhere.
Yeah. I've been on conferences for 2 months in a row, being maybe a week home during the last 2 months. That was brutal.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I
You
went
know what
to...
the problem is, right? I said to myself somewhere very early in this trip, I'm not going to do it again. But next time it will come up, I'm like, oh, okay, why not?
Well, you're just too popular. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you're not rising to take that bait. Okay, well, not surprising. The last podcast we had, I was at the G3 Summit down in Austin, which you apparently just blew off, right? Because you don't care about Groovy, really.
Yeah. So part of it true. The first part of the sentence is true. The second is not. So I did blew up. But first of all, I had good excuse in conference. I think it was reInvent.
That's the Amazon one?
Amazon Web Services is kind of important part of our ecosystem as JFrog. So that's conference I couldn't afford to miss.
Did you?
Also, I don't think Java Groovy Puzzlers was accepted at all this year. So probably could push. And I know people that know people. For example, I know you and you know important people. And I could ask you to ask for me. I don't know if you would do it, but I could give it a try. But since I had this conflict anyhow,
I would have done it for a fee or something. I mean, I'm sure I could have been bribed. That wouldn't have been a problem. My standards for that sort of thing are remarkably low, and I'm just not that expensive. I keep waiting for the opportunity for us to sell out, to actually be sponsored by somebody and then make a ton of money just, shilling for whatever horrible product. I mean, for all I know, Microsoft's going to come and ask us to shill for them, but nobody ever seems to do that. Nobody ever seems to offer. I'm assuming we're just not that important. It's kind of a problem.
I think we can speak to sponsor us, so we'll promote Kotlin.
Oh, that would just be perfect, wouldn't it? We could get JetBrains to sponsor us as to do Kotlin on the Groovy Podcast. Wow. Okay, so that's where we're going to start, huh? Okay, well, I do have one joke, by the way.
If you wanna do the most horrible sponsorship ever, that would be a good place to start.
Well, except that I like JetBrains, so that's a problem. I mean, I like them. I don't like the idea, but I like the... Anyway.
Depends on how much they pay. You might very well like the idea when you see the numbers.
Well, it's possible that one of these things is more like it sounds like a good idea, and then when it actually happens, you have this ethical, moral dilemma. I don't know. Again, you're probably right. Everybody has their price, and I assume that mine would be shockingly low, but I don't know since it's never come up. I don't really know yet. I did tell you I was going to have one gag though related to your reInvent conference. This was making the rounds on Twitter. I think it was that if Wonder Woman and Peter Parker decided to go into business together to provide help to people, then they could call the company Amazon Web Services.
Absolutely, Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, pretty horrible.
Which, by the way, you mentioned. No, it was good. It was good. Not as good as your epic saga battle story and dragons and dinosaurs, but it was decent. Okay. Which reminds me of a new for next year that we already finalized and should be sent to print any days now. And this T-shirt with the joke that you just came up with.
Oh, really? Got something in mind? What did you say?
It's not in my makings. It's in the manufacturing.
Oh,
But I cannot name it. I cannot tell you. But you can think about, you said Amazon Web Services. We had the Spider Frog this year. I don't know what other options might be, but it's something that I cannot confirm nor deny.
okay. Well, that's a nice little tease, which doesn't really say much of anything. So I guess we'll just have to wait. I mean, who knows when we're going to do another Groovy podcast too? It could be, I guess Sergio is probably gambling. I mean, he's probably surprised that it's not already Easter. You know, good old Sergio Delamo with the wonderful Groovy calamari. Might as well say something nice about
This
the
gamble. I
package.
think you won, right? You mentioned it will be done at the summit, and it actually happened.
Yeah, but then he suspected that the one after that wasn't going to be till Easter, and hey, we beat that deadline too. So as long as he keeps giving
Yeah. So
long deadlines, we got a shot. All right, well
won again.
let's actually turn to do something vaguely related to what we're supposed to be doing on the podcast anyway. I've got the show notes
Just
here.
miss you. I didn't see you for so long. I just enjoying this conversation. So
Yeah, well, it's been a while, hasn't it? I mean, it really does feel like we haven't had actually that if we start looking back in time, that could get depressing. We probably that way lies madness. We should probably move on. At any rate, Groovy's latest, I wasn't going to keep track of every single individual release on some of these, so I simply wanted to say that the latest version of Groovy is 2.4.13, so it's another small bug fix release that came out in the last few weeks. Of course, we talked about at the podcast at the G3 Summit that there's now multiple different chains of development going on with Groovy. We've got the 2.5 chain, which is beta 2 right now, and the 2.6 chain, which is alpha 2, and the 3.0 alpha 1. Of course, 2.6 and 3.0 are very closely related. The only difference being is that 2.6 is going to support Java 7 and 3.0 will mandate Java 8. So 2.5 is really the next release version before we jump to 3, and that is currently in beta, so I expect there'll probably be a couple of release candidates. The 2.6 and 3.0 will be moving together, and eventually it'll just be 3 once we move everybody up, or once we mandate that everybody moves to Java 8. Have you tried any of those, by the way?
no, not yet. It's late, and I wanted to ask you if you heard anything about Java 9 compatibility.
There was definitely
Topic
discussion.
that yeah,
Yeah, I saw.
I heard it a lot, and people like, what? Groovy doesn't support Java 9, so Groovy is dead and all that.
It does support Java 9. The problem is that there are some probably breaking changes that need to be made in order to resolve some of the jigsaw related issues. I believe there's
Exactly.
packages that are in the same package in 2 different jars, which isn't allowed, and some other things as well. Right now, when you run Groovy on Java 9, it's not modularized, and it works. The problem is, of course, it gives you a bunch of horrific warnings that, according to Paul King, aren't even real. They're things that might happen in the future, and yet these warnings are scaring everybody away. So that's a bit of a problem. I don't know if too many people...
Exactly, and also and being here a devil's advocate, it so we got lucky with Java 9 because it eventually went into this compatibility mode in which the module isolation is not enforced, but that will go away in some point of time, and then we will be back in the same problems with accessing private variables, etc. So this is something that really need to be addressed as soon as possible.
Well, I know that Paul was talking about it at the conference, and of course, Guillaume also was not there. He was at a different conference, but I know he's involved in the discussions. And Graham Roche seems to believe that these things are doable. It just may involve, non-backward compatible breaking changes when they move to the new version. I don't know if that's scheduled for 3, however. I suspect that the 3.0 version will not be modularized to Java 9 specifications, but it should run on Java 9. I just don't know. I've only used Java 9 a little bit. I know you're using it a lot more. Of course, what surprises me about Java 9 is it's not even a, what do they call, LTS, a long-term support release. Is it 10 will be out in March, and then 11 and
Yeah, 10. I understand that 10 will be LTS. Yes.
10's the long-term support one?
Yes, that at least now the idea. Of course, everything can change.
And then we'll see if that actually does get released in March. I mean, obviously they're headed for this 6-month release schedule, and we'll see if they're able to maintain it. But I don't know. So I guess we're in a transition period. Although, if you're still able to run Java 8, everything is fine.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, and of course, the Spring people and the Hibernate people have already modularized. They've already started mandating a minimum SDK of Java 8. So these are all coming, and I imagine Groovy will. But I'd say Spring is ready for Java 9. I don't know about the Hibernate / JPA stuff. I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. So, at any rate, that's the Groovy story at the moment. I should mention, by the way, there was a link that I put in the show notes. Computer World had an article discussing the new features and versions of Groovy coming in 2018. They called it something about a Groovy 2018 roadmap, and I'm pretty sure they interviewed Paul King about that. I mean, we were supposed to start our podcast at the G3 Summit. We wound up starting a little bit late because he was on the phone with the editors there, trying to explain to people who don't know anything about Groovy what was coming in Groovy and all that. But at any rate, there is a link there that you can take a look at if you're interested, and we'll see how that plays out as next year goes along. Now, on the Grail side, oh, sorry, you were going to say?
Just mentioning that you really should take a look at this article, because it's and we don't have this visibility often into what's going on and what is the plan. So it's very short. It's just a couple of paragraphs and lists about the team are planning, but it's actually very, very good to take a look at.
That's true. It's a very short article.
Highly advised.
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot there, but there's definitely a summary. So now on the Grails front, the current version is 3.3.2. I expect 3.4 will be in progress. I don't know what the plan is for when that will be released, but I know that's being worked on. And there was some speculation about the changes planned for 4, but by talking to Graham Roche at the conference, it made it clear that work on that has only begun. It's going to be late next year when they move to that. So I suspect that Grails will not be requiring Java 8 for quite some time, even though Spring has already moved to 5. When they decide to move Grails up to Grails 4 and make that leap, I think they're planning to really look at some more fundamental issues, and they really want to make sure that if there's going to be a major version number change, that it's worth it, that justifies that kind of move. I will mention, by the way, that one of the newer things in Grails, even though it's been out for a while, a lot of people are not aware of it. That whole application forge page for creating a new Grails app at start.grails.org. It's very similar to how there's start.spring.io for creating a Spring app. And I think Grails is Gradle is in the process of trying to set something up similar. But this the application forge at start.grails.org will allow you to create a Grails app simply by filling in a form. And of course, what it includes is a Grails wrapper, so that you don't even have to download and install Grails at all. You can simply fill out the form or access it via curl or what have you, download an application with all the features you want in it using the right profile and everything, and then start using the Grails wrapper bundled inside that app, and you're off and running on a new Grails application.
Yeah, and I really love this proliferation of good ideas ideas from one project that we love to. So here we go. The starter page comes from Spring, and the wrapper comes from and it's actually it's a very very good thing, because first of all, if you know one technology, you know what to expect from another, and all of those are I would say in the same like area, right? So if you use Gradle, you sorry, if you use Grails, you probably are familiar with Gradle and Spring, and then just make the developers' lives easier. So big plus.
The other thing I liked about it, by the way, is I upgraded my IntelliJ IDEA distribution, and I don't know when this started, probably in 2017.3, that version. But if you say new project, they actually have both a Grails option and an application forge option, so that you can actually click on the application forge and it's just a front end on that same website, downloading options from there and everything, just like they have the one for the Spring initializer as well. So that's nice too. Now, the Gradle people, of course, have been very hard at work on performance. They've been trying to make their project as fast as possible. I think the latest version there, of course, is 4.4. It's got a lot of nice build cache stuff in it, and parallel capabilities as well among sub-projects, and a new worker API that has been, I think that was added in the 4s. I just don't remember which exactly 4 dot version that was added. But now there's a blog post about the worker API. There's additional information about it. All of these things are leading to where they're eventually going to be able to make tasks parallel wherever possible as well, automatically. So there's a lot of nice features coming in Gradle, many that are already here. I always make sure to upgrade all my Gradle wrappers to use the latest version, because the API itself doesn't seem to have changed that much, but boy, the performance is just improved by leaps and bounds.
And you can always switch to the Kotlin DSL.
You keep going there, don't you? You keep trying that. I mean, to take that seriously for one moment, they are headed toward a 1.0 release on the Kotlin DSL, but I think we're still a little bit away from that. I mean, right now, I think the current version of the Kotlin DSL is something like 0.13 or whatever. I don't know when they're ready for a 1.0. I think it's starting to stabilize. I think they're becoming happier with it. I just don't know what the actual plans are. I expect that will come up probably in the first half of next year, maybe in the first quarter. So you're dying to use that, right?
I'm looking forward. Yeah, of course. I will have good ID support.
Well, potentially, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else?
No, I bet it will be first class, because that's the selling point, right? That's the whole purpose.
Well, I know they're working hard on it. We'll see how that plays out. Just when I played with it a little bit, I didn't get the sense that it was ready for prime time yet, but I don't think they expect it to be ready yet. I think it's still got a little ways to go before. I mean, I think when it goes 1.0, and then I think everybody's going to be willing to at least give it a try. Right now, I'm still happy with the Groovy DSL, but then again, I'm happy with Groovy. So it's, it's a bit of a problem there.
That's true.
Okay, now I noticed something with Spock, by the way. In general, I've still been using Spock 1.0. I do try to use Spock 1.1 when it comes up. It just I don't think it was that radical a change. But there was a release I saw echoed in the Apache Groovy Twitter feed, which was about Spock reports. The Spock reports subproject is now in version 1.4.0. And yet again, that's another project that is mandating a minimum JDK of Java 8 on that. I've never used the Spock reports. I've generally been happy with the existing test reports, but it does have this powerful mechanism for creating reports to whatever customization you would like, even including code snippets and everything. You ever play with any of that? Oh, I think I saw it. Did I lose you there for a second?
Yeah. I think you froze for a second, but
yeah, we're having some we're having some annoying network issues, but I don't. I'm not aware of why. I don't see anything major going on in my network that's giving us a problem. But at any rate,
Might be our network, although I don't know. It looks
I'm
fine.
quite content to
Well,
blame you.
but we can always blame everything.
All right. Well, at any rate, I do encourage people to take a look at that Spock Reports new submodule inside of Spock. It does require Spock 1.1 and Java 8, but I don't think that's too much to ask anymore. I think that's probably a reasonable requirement. In terms of major versions, did you happen to see the Jeb, our old friend Jeb, the browser
Yes.
API?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's huge. Jab 2.0 are big news.
That's is it Marcin or Marcin Erdman announced that on the Jeb the message board on there. I think it's a Google group or whatever. But he announced Jeb 2.0 out, and that required Java 8 because they upgraded the web driver inside it to a 3 dot something, and that required Java 8. So everything's up there now. I don't get the
Yeah,
feeling.
but I mean, we keep surprising projects require Java 8. Come on, Java 8 is requiring Java 8 is not something extraordinary now. I would be surprised it requires Java 9 by now, but requiring Java 8 is all fine. I mean, there is
Oh, certainly,
no,
but I didn't get the feeling there were that
except
many.
of corner cases, Java 8 now.
Yeah, I just didn't get the feeling that were that many changes to Jeb other than the move to Java 8, and the upgrade of the underlying libraries. It looked like if you knew Jeb from before and you've used Jeb for many years, that it's a natural transition. It doesn't look like they broke anything. It doesn't look like it's fundamentally rewriting how you're going to write your automation scripts or your tests or your page views or anything like that. Page model, it all looks pretty much the same. I was just judging by the notes inside the book of Jeb.
From what I understand, the biggest difference is the new WebDriver versions that now support Java 8, which kind of forced them to support Java 8, and that, for in their perspective, required a major release. That's what I understand.
Yeah, and that's fine. So that what that means is if you ever used Jeb before, it'd be a natural, easy transition to the new version. If you've never used Jeb, go ahead and try out the new version. I still think it's a very impressive project. Doesn't really get as much press as it ought to. Similar to like Jeepers, it's just one of those that people are not aware of, and yet anybody who writes Selenium tests or Selenium tests, however you want to say that, should really look at Jeb because it can make their lives much, much simpler.
Absolutely.
Okay, now moving on to blog posts and articles and things like that. Guillaume Laforge had a blog post about one of his talks at Java 1 about how languages influence each other and the perspectives on, 14 years of Groovy, being the head of the project like that for all those years. So he put in a blog post, and in that blog post, he included his slides. So I think there's an embedded version of where the slides actually reside, and very interesting looking at the perspective on how things have changed over the years. It's really nice to see that he's still, putting some of those things together as well.
Yeah, and I think we, of course, Guillaume had a better standpoint to observe it, and deeper, wider picture of what's going on. But I think we can all feel what Guillaume is talking about, right? So, if you remember, a couple of years ago when Swift was released, oh, that looks like Groovy. We saw Kotlin, and we were like, "Oh, that looks like Groovy." So I guess that's more or less what Guillaume is mentioning. Good solutions and Groovy is full of good and elegant solutions are affiliated to other languages as well. Stuff like, the classic example would be what an Elvis operator, right? And the null save and this kind of stuff. It's kind of just moves along, and it's always have been, right? So we now live, which came directly from C, which makes it what, 1960s.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, it's always
So yep, this is how it works.
it generally seems to come as a surprise to new developers or somewhat inexperienced ones that the creators of all these languages actually talk to each other, that they actually pay attention to what's going on in the other languages, and everybody's borrowing from everybody, and that's not a bad thing. That's how it's supposed to work. Each language gets a chance to try out new ideas, and if they're successful, they make their way into other languages. I think that's a good thing too. Of course, Guillaume Laforge as well, we should say congratulations, was made a Java champion, as well as many others.
And this goes exactly about influencing languages with other languages. I don't know if we have a better example of such an influence of Java influenced Groovy, right? That's
definitely
in a lot of parts it is the same language. So it only makes sense that Guillaume is now a Java champion, being forever Groovy champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that the people who vote on that were valuing his experience in a non-Java JVM-based language, which is a good thing. Chris Judd was also one of the group that was put in there. Chris, that was awarded Java champion status. There were several people on the list, but people may know Chris Judd as well. He's been active in the Groovy area, even though I don't know how much of he's doing right now, but he's another name that would be recognized from the Groovy ecosystem inside there. And I put in the complete list in there as well.
Yep. Yeah. Oleg Shilaev, another very name from this list, and he's the developer advocate with zero turnaround. And name here, I think it's kind of, I don't know, he's doing something with Kotlin at Ken Kousen.
Well, I do appreciate that you actually pronounced it correctly. That was very kind of you, even though I knew you'd throw in the Kotlin reference in there. Well, that was, I have to say,
warmest congratulations, completely deserved. I'm very honored and proud to do this gig together with you and know you, and when you pretend that you are my friend, it warms my heart. So congratulations, and absolutely deserve it. I'm really proud to know you.
Wow, well, thank you very much. I have to say I was surprised. I'm still struggling a bit with good old imposter syndrome there. I don't think of myself in the same category as people like Guillaume or Venkat Subramaniam or any of the others that I really admire there. I'm glad that I have a contribution. I have a book that's Java related as well as a book that's Groovy related, so I feel like at least I'm on both camps there. So I'm still trying to figure out what it all means. The only thing that I've heard is that apparently I will be able, next time when I renew my IntelliJ license, I'll probably get that for free. So right there, then there was a nice benefit to that. So
a lot of perks: IntelliJ license, awesome jackets, free entrance to Java, meeting Redwood Shores for a Java Champions meeting before Java 1. That one we can skip, but the jackets are very nice.
You know a lot more about this than I do. I don't even know about the jacket. So excellent. Well, I look forward to that, and I'll probably take advantage of it at some point. Okay, so moving on. There was a nice little article. Now, I don't know how much I care for the articles at BlazeMeter because they have obviously have a product to sell, and their articles and website and everything is really geared toward that. But they did write an article about writing Groovy scripts that are supported for JMeter. The pasting in JMeter using a Groovy script. And I do recognize that one of the JMeter is one of the areas that tends to bring people into the Groovy ecosystem because they have supported Groovy as a scripting language for quite some time now. And that's very nice. So we put a link in there, into the show.
Right. So with BlazeMeter, of course, they have a product to promote, and I don't think anything wrong with that. But they use JMeter under the hood, so I would give them a lot of credit for knowing and being being expert at JMeter. So I think it's good that they share community, and yeah. So if you need a stress loading tool, uh, you have a JMeter or a Gatlin, and of course Gatlin is newer and a little bit more shiny, but you need to remember the DSL. While with JMeter, you feel at home and in heaven using Groovy DSL. Gatlin, your DSL is Scala, so I think JMeter is the tool to use.
What was the name of that other product you mentioned? I hadn't heard about that one.
Gatlin. It's like Gatlin gun,
Oh, okay. No, I haven't played
the
with that
gun
at
machine.
all. Interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
Jay,
it's but I mean, spare yourself the googling. They use Scala as a DSL kind of end of story there.
and
It's
Jay
all you
Meter's
need
been
to
an open source project.
all you need to know about Gatlin that it uses Scala as DSL.
Okay. Yeah, and Jay Meter's been an open source project for many, many years. Very popular there. Speaking of blog
Absolutely.
posts, our old friend and ally Bert Beckwith, finally decided to contribute. Bert, by the way, is now working at Harvard University in their IT department. So that was kind of interesting that he finally started working there. He was an adjunct there for a while. At any rate, he wrote a blog post about how to add a Groovy web console to a Grails application, which was interesting. I mean, he happens to be fond of a plugin that I've always liked as well, the console plugin. Have you ever used the console plugin in a Grails app?
No, I didn't.
Well, it's a way of it means you don't have to start up the Grails console. You could just put this plugin in there, and then you can go to whatever the app name is /console, and you have inside embedded in the browser a Groovy console that has all the Grails domain language support and everything. And I've been using it for many years. I always liked it. And what I think Bert was pointing out in his blog post was that in order to add a plugin, of course, you have to recompile and rebundle your app and redeploy it as a WAR file. Whereas what he was showing was how to add a light Groovy web console to a Grails WAR without having to go through the trouble of getting a plugin. And it was entertaining as always. So I recommend taking a look at that one as well.
This is awesome. Yep.
Now, another thing going on during this holiday season is the so-called advent of code. I was not aware of that. Then I noticed that good old Dirk Koenig at MIDI on Twitter has been participating in that. They have a different coding project pretty much every day or every couple of days or whatever it is. And we also have his Twitter handle is Java Vasquez, and I honestly don't remember his first name. I've met him, I know, a couple of times, but it wasn't on his Twitter page. So I don't remember offhand. But his Twitter handle, he also is working on this. And I imagine there are several other people who just aren't really talking about it. But at any rate, the advent of code is a series of programming puzzles that are relatively small, and various people are solving them in whatever language they choose to. Both Java Vasquez and MIDI are both posting their solutions online as they solve each one. And they're doing it, of course, in Groovy, which is interesting for us.
Yeah, and I'm personally happy to see that Dirk still stuff with Groovy, although his love for
Frege.
Yeah, Frege.
Yeah. For
and,
Haskell.
Is it going anywhere, this Frege thing?
Not in my experience, but then again, I don't operate in the Haskell world, so I'm not sure exactly, if anything's happening over there. I mean, there's the dedicated functional programming people who really care about the depths of that, of the immutability and pure functionality and all that kind of stuff, really care about that. And of course, Frege gives them a chance to run Haskell on the JVM. I talked to Venkat Subramaniam about it, and of course he was of the opinion that Frege is interesting, but if you're going to run Haskell, just run Haskell, you know. But Dirk, I'm sure.
And I think Clojure is a JVM language that is much more popular and
well, Clojure, of course, is Lisp or a Lisp on the JVM.
Right? Yeah,
and
it is Lisp. Yeah,
the Clojure people
right.
would argue that it is a pure functional language, but I think Dirk would argue that Haskell/Frege is even more functional than Clojure. And I certainly don't want to get in the middle of that debate. You know, I think it's interesting, and I agree with you. I imagine Dirk is having fun getting his chance to go back into the Groovy ecosystem and write some quick and easy solutions to problems. By the way, speaking of that,
approve that. Yep.
There was a little discussion I saw on Twitter about extension functions in Kotlin, which always kind of cracked me up. I mean, after all, Groovy has had both runtime and compile time metaprogramming techniques for years and years. And they were talking about, what did they have? A little app where they put in parentheses, they put in 2 integers in a range. So it's basically a ... b in parentheses, and then put a .random method on it. So it could generate a random integer in between the 2 bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how this was an interesting extension function and how, you know, this was showing the capabilities. And I'm sitting there thinking, I think it would take us, that's a one-liner basically, right? I mean, it would take us maybe, if you wanted to be careful, 2 lines of Groovy code to add that to the range. Well, I suppose you'd add it to int range rather than range, but you could do it either way using the meta class. It would be quick and dirty. And it was just yet another example of somebody getting excited in Kotlin about a feature that we've had for a decade, you know, inside of Groovy.
And that going back to the talks that you deliver, which are often an imaging problem or image problem of Groovy and the publicity of it. So yeah, I think it's about time OCI starts looking for developer advocates for Groovy.
Well, I think given everything that OCI has done, I am certainly not going to ask them to do more than what they're doing. I think they're, yeah.
No, that was more of a ramp up for another comment that I wanted to make about hiring developer advocates, that I'm for someone to join me as developer advocate at JFrog, working on a lot of promoting our beloved Groovy in any way possible. Yeah.
Well, you'll have to add some. Yeah, please add something about that to the show notes so that people can get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we're having some network issues on this podcast. See, that's the danger. If OCI, for example, decided to suddenly sponsor the Groovy podcast, we'd have to work out. We'd really have to raise our production values, you know, and that would be a challenge.
You know what? I think we will give Zoom a try next time. We might have better results because I'm generally very, very pleased with what they do. By the way, if that will work as well.
Well, we'll see how this one turns out, and if this one turns out to be a disaster, we can re-record a lot of this using that Zoom and see how things go. See if we can come up with different jokes and everything. But at any rate, so you're looking for a developer advocate. Was that definitely an Artifactory developer advocate, or is that a?
Yeah, no. So developer advocate cannot. Right. This is not how it works. I guess you would hate a product developer advocate as any other developer. Developer advocates advocate developers, right?
Okay.
So we're looking for developer advocates that will help in our domain releasing their software faster using a wide range of tools, including JFrog products, but definitely not limited to it.
Is that
we're looking for? Yeah.
Is remote acceptable in that?
I lost you for a second.
I'm sorry. Is remote work acceptable on that?
It's a complicated question.
Okay.
So here's the thing, right? We're on the road for when we are not traveling for conferences and shows, the collaboration is critical. And although I do know that we can make a remote collaboration, as you can see now, if we would say sit here side by side, it would probably be better.
It would be easier. Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, you'll add something inside the show notes for that. Speaking of jobs, I noticed that there's a job at Lego. Lego, of course, is the classic little brick company, and they are quite the technology area, and they are based. Now, of course, there's a branch near me. There's one up in Massachusetts, but the job that they're advertising is based in Denmark. And they mentioned right in there that they mentioned they were looking for a Java developer, but of course their infrastructure uses Jeb and Spock and Groovy in many places as well. So this would be an opportunity to use Groovy in an active major system in a major worldwide company like that. So I put that link in the show notes as well.
All right, and I'm adding our position as well.
Okay, so I'll just mention just to finish up a couple things. First of all, our old friend Mr. Hockey was back with a little contribution on his blog on transforming collections using the collect entries method. That's always an interesting one that a lot of people are not aware of. It's a method that allows you to put in a closure that will generate the keys for a given map, and then it's like doing a group by inside a list where you are grouping by a particular quantity without that quantity simply being an element of the list. You can actually generate whatever the quantity is using a closure. And it's very powerful. It's remarkable. But again, Mr. Hockey makes it extremely intuitive and extremely simple. So it's good to see that. Finally, there's another. I know I missed some Grails guides. They're still cranking those out. The one that I did notice was the Grails profiling using your kit. So they now have another Grails guide on how to profile both memory and CPU in a Grails app using the Your Kit Java profiler. I know there's a Gradle profiler as well that works with some of that, but this is a Grails guide that is already ready to go, and you can try that out as well.
Yep.
We should also mention that the call for papers is still open until into January for both the Greach conference in Madrid, which very popular conference. Everybody who goes seems to absolutely love that conference. They have a great time in Madrid. If you have any chance at all of being in the area of Madrid, the conference is the middle of March, the 16th and 17th, with a workshop day on the 15th. Then I certainly encourage you to submit an idea. You know, the paper call for papers is open until January 15th. And of course, the Great Conf cycle is rolling around again. So the Great Conf in Copenhagen, Great Conf EU, is at the end of May 30th and June 1st. And the call for papers is open till the end of January. So we'll have to have another podcast to remind people about that as well. Anything else you wanted
Hopefully we will see you in all those conferences.
Yeah, well,
because they are great, and there is actually no better way to interact than a software conference, I would say.
Well, I certainly hope to be at Great Conf in the U.S. this year. I'm still sad that I missed the last one. So I'm looking forward to trying to come this year. I haven't tried to fill out the call for papers or anything like that yet, but I'll have to throw something in there. I expect you'll be there as well. We'll have to do a Groovy podcast from there. I would love to go to Greach, but I don't know that I could afford it at the moment because I've got other trips planned as well. But I know we'll have other people there. Maybe we can have Sergio report from that location, or any of the other people, including Graham Roche, I'm sure will be there as well. We should say
the usual suspects.
Yeah, we should say something nice about Sergio Delamont, even though everybody else has gotten kind of slowed down on their reporting from the Groovy ecosystem. His Groovy Calamari is still coming out on a regular basis. So that's wonderful.
And it's a great source for topics for this podcast.
Oh, yeah. If it wasn't, by the way, do you have any idea who runs the Apache Groovy Twitter feed?
By the way, did you have any? And then it was like,
oh, do you know who monitors? who's posting under the Apache Groovy Twitter feed? Do you know?
No, I don't. I think maybe it's Paul, maybe it's Guillaume, but I don't have any. It's just all guesses. I don't have any information about it. I don't know.
Well, if the sound comes through and anybody listens to this podcast, then maybe we'll find out shortly. But again, that's an excellent source of information about what's going on in Groovy and related projects. The Apache Groovy Twitter feed, of course, Grails has a Twitter feed, and Gradle does as well. The Grails, we should also thank No Fluff Just Stuff for hosting the homepage for the Groovy Podcast. The conference tour for No Fluff Just Stuff is in hiatus at the moment. We finished with the G3 Summit and then the Rich Web Summit, and then ArcConf as well was last week. And now I've got a break on all that until the end of February, at which point I guess I'm going to be beginning my 9th year on that tour, which kind of blows my mind.
It's a good place to be. It's a lot of good people. It's a good show. It's good content.
And
I mean, why not? I still hope.
Sorry,
invited to UberConf, and if you can nudge our friend Jay on that, I will be really thankful.
Well, I have access to Jay, but that doesn't mean Jay listens to me. But I will.
Jay doesn't listen to anyone, but just. You can mention again.
Oh, I will.
We will. I hope you accept credit cards, and we will make sure that everybody are pleased with this transaction.
No. These days, it would all be in Bitcoin. Seriously, right? I mean, it's got to be in Bitcoin. I mean, I assume that because you're still at work, you don't own a ton of Bitcoin. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, no, but you know what? I own a little bit of JFrog, and if you ask me, that's a much better and safer investment.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're not cashing out for your massive run up this year. Okay. Well, then we'll say thank you to everybody. Glad that anybody was able to listen to this. And again, we'll listen to it. And if the sound quality is too bad, if the networking problems are too major, then let's try again maybe next week using Zoom or something like that to see if we can put something together again. Okay?
It sounds great. And we will put something together again, regardless of the quality of this one, just because this is what we do. Season 2 is off its way. It's a second podcast without a huge gap between them. Let's try to keep up. So we kind of rebranded our over a couple of months as a season break, which I think is valid. And now let's try to keep up with season 2.
Excellent. So you have a great holiday as well.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, enjoy the holidays. You do have snow, I presume, so that's kind of fun, or for at least a day, and then it's not. But yep, it's the right weather for the holidays, that's for sure.
Yeah, we are getting typical holiday weather. That's true. So we wish everybody in our listening area an excellent holiday and a Happy New Year. And I expect that we will either talk to you soon or we will talk to you in the new year. So thank you very much. Take care.
See you in the next episode of Groovy Podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.